Meghan Markle has never been a member. I don't know if she's become a member now, but she had been working for Soho House since at least 2005.
Meghan Markle calls it destiny, but most people see it as clever networking with a royal twist. Because, let's be honest, fairy tales don't usually begin with a Soho House membership card.
When she started on Suits and she befriended Jessica Mulroney, her status changed.
Prince Harry believed he knew every detail of Meghan's life until one photograph appeared and changed everything.
She was one of my Deal or No Deal girls that were, she was a caddy for all of my celebrities.
A faded yacht photo hidden deep in the corners of the internet. It seemed innocent, but it carried whispers of mystery.
But in the end, nothing beats the truth, the real fact.
There was sunlight, laughter, and the sparkle of champagne, but in the corner, something tiny lingered, almost invisible yet strangely unsettling.
Prince Andrew, have you noticed how he completely avoids looking at Meghan Markle when she's around him or when she was around him?
A navy blue canvas bag sat quietly in the photo, stamped with the famous Soho House emblem. To most people, it was just another accessory, but to Harry, that name echoed with whispers, old memories, and a silent warning that he couldn't ignore.
So when Meghan came along into the scene, I just thought, this is fascinating. How is this going to play out?
Because Soho House wasn't just another members-only club, it was a secret gateway. A place where actresses met billionaires, models mingled with powerful politicians, and ambitious rising stars found their path straight into the world of royalty.
Jessica Mulroney introduced her to Marcus Anderson in Toronto.
And suddenly, Meghan's story started to crumble. The timeline just didn't add up. The media painted it as a fairy tale, where an actress meets a prince by chance, love conquers all, and tradition bows to modern dreams. But what if it didn't happen that way? What if their meeting wasn't fate, but careful design? Because that single photograph, that simple bag, the yacht, and the friends who never appeared in interviews, all of it opened a door to something Harry was never supposed to uncover. A hidden web of introductions, a quiet map of names, a pattern far too perfect to be coincidence. From Istanbul to London to Toronto, each city revealed another connection, each thread leading back to one powerful inner circle and one man who seemed to be pulling every string.
I don't think he heard Meghan's voice. I think he heard his mother's voice.
Marcus Anderson, the name that suddenly changed everything. Now, Harry isn't just questioning his marriage, he's questioning the very story he thought defined his life. Because when a fairy tale starts to look more like a strategy, love stops feeling like destiny and starts feeling like the perfect setup.
Gentlemen, right here, that's Nick Jones, the original founder of Soho House. Guess where he's going there? He's arriving at Meghan Markle and Harry's wedding as guest of honor. Oh yeah, Soho was present there.
It started in silence, a private search late at night inside the quiet walls of Frogmore Cottage. Harry wasn't hunting for scandal, he was searching for the truth. Dozens of old photos were spread across his desk, alongside faded tabloids and archived Instagram shots. Pieces of Meghan's life before the palace, scattered like puzzle fragments waiting to be solved. But what truly caught his eye wasn't the smiles or the glamorous backdrops, it was the pattern. In nearly every image, one symbol kept surfacing again and again, a champagne glass engraved with the same crest, a velvet invitation marked with the same elegant initials.
Epstein was also Harvey Weinstein, very prominent. There were members. Meghan Markle was just one of the working girls for Soho House. Call girl, working girl, escort, whatever you want to call it. That's what she was.
Soho House International. To the public, it looked like a luxurious escape where celebrities hid from cameras and executives sealed quiet deals. But within London's elite social circles, its influence ran much deeper, far beyond velvet ropes and champagne toasts. It was the place where introductions were arranged, careers carefully curated, and reputations deliberately constructed. And standing quietly at the heart of it all was a man Harry had met only briefly, Marcus Anderson. Anderson wasn't just another acquaintance in Meghan's past. He had been in her orbit for years, her trusted confidant, her constant travel companion, and the man insiders whispered about as her social strategist. Archive society blogs and event registries painted a revealing picture. Marcus was the unseen thread connecting Meghan to powerful players across Europe and North America. Each new clue made Harry's pulse race faster. The yacht wasn't random, the parties weren't spontaneous, and the friendships weren't accidental. They were orchestrated. Every detail seemed perfectly designed to lead her straight into his world.
Being a simple soul has easily changed to suit Meghan's agenda.
As the clock crept past midnight, Harry felt a chill of realization, something far more unsettling than he expected. The same powerful names funding his charities were the very faces smiling beside Meghan in those long-forgotten photos. That wasn't luck or coincidence. That was architecture carefully built, perfectly planned. And it was about to reveal the story no palace press release dared to mention. For years, the world believed in a fairy tale too flawless to question a prince, tired of protocol, and an actress searching for purpose beyond the screen. Two souls, oceans apart, magically drawn together by fate. That's the narrative the media packaged, polished, and sold to millions. The modern love story that was supposed to mend the monarchy's wounds. Every smile from the palace balcony, every glowing headline, every soft-focus interview painted Meghan as the woman who made the world believe in love again.
She arrived in London, full career, single girl, wasn't interested. Of course, she'd been coming to London since 2013, hunting for a man to marry. She wanted an Englishman. She was on a man hunt.
But behind the glowing portraits and the glossy magazine covers, the timeline was already starting to shift. That famous blind date arranged by a so-called mutual friend, that friend wasn't random at all. She was a longtime member of Soho House London, the very same network that had been quietly weaving itself around Meghan's life for years. The press never mentioned that Meghan had already been attending private Soho gatherings in Toronto elite events, reserved for high-ranking members, not everyday television faces. And right at the center of it all was Marcus Anderson, the man who controlled those guest lists. He wasn't just nearby, he was sitting at the very table where Meghan's introduction to Harry was carefully planned.
This is what Meghan has been doing. She's a piece of Klingon, like she clings to somebody who can get her there. So Meghan manages to befriend one person of a very popular group, and then that person introduces her to the others. And because she's being brought in by somebody they trust, she's welcomed in.
Every coincidence left a trace, and every encounter had a host. To the public, it looked like pure chemistry, but to those within the inner circuit, it resembled choreography, timed and rehearsed to perfection. Even the earliest photos told a story, their crisp park strolls, the secret getaways to Botswana, all following a rhythm far too polished to be spontaneous. Someone had been shaping the image long before the cameras ever showed up. And while the world celebrated their royal engagement with tears and headlines, few noticed how smoothly Meghan's old social circle blended right into Harry's royal one. Different backgrounds, same familiar faces, because this wasn't a fairy tale written by destiny, it was a production directed by design.
Markle did know Prince Andrew, and she knew Sarah incredibly well, which makes Zara a liar, because she said, I didn't know Meghan Markle until she invited me to her wedding. That is BS.
The script was only beginning to unravel, and what Harry found next turned curiosity into obsession. It began with one strange discovery, but it didn't stop there. The more he searched, the faster the connections multiplied, forming a web he could barely untangle. He started recognizing names, familiar ones, socialites, wealthy donors, even business partners who had quietly backed his charities. But now, those same names appeared beside Meghan in photos taken years before they ever met. Different countries, different events, yet always the same faces. And the deeper he looked, the clearer the pattern became. Archive guest lists placed Meghan at Soho House gatherings in Istanbul, Madrid, and Barcelona between 2014 and 2016, rubbing shoulders with financiers, diplomats, and heirs who would later surface in Harry's own world. This wasn't random proximity, it was strategic overlap. Old society blogs describe Marcus Anderson's hand-picked soirees, exclusive nights designed to pair potential, a social chessboard where every move seemed deliberate.
Not poor. They just wanted to land a rich man and make easy money. And the worst part of it all is that Meghan Markle was already with Trevor Engelson there. She was already living with him. There was no need for her to be hustling this way.
Women were invited for their ambition, and men for their influence, every introduction a precise move in a much larger game. Harry soon realized he hadn't been the first royal Marcus Anderson had quietly courted, and Meghan wasn't the first actress to move through those glittering circles. But she was the one who learned how to stay. Then came the money trail, the inconsistencies that didn't add up. Soho House memberships, international flights, and lavish private villas. None of it matched her television income. Invoices hinted at something far more controlled. Her expenses weren't coming from her own accounts, but were covered through corporate partnerships. In simple terms, someone else was paying the price. When Harry reached out to old acquaintances, the silence was deafening. Calls unanswered, messages ignored, until finally one warned him, "Don't dig too deep, that world protects its own." And that's when the fairy tale began to splinter, because every revelation pushed him closer to one chilling realization.
I believe Jessica Mulroney was a member, along with her husband, of Soho House, not Meghan.
The life Harry believed was built on love might have been crafted from strategy. And if the timeline had been rewritten, what else had changed? By the time he followed the final thread, the pattern was impossible to deny. Every introduction, every photo, every so-called coincidence that led to their love story traced back to one man quietly operating behind the scenes, Marcus Anderson. To the public, he appeared charming, professional, and perfectly discreet. A hospitality consultant for a members-only world of power and privilege. But to those who had attended his private gatherings, Marcus was far more than a host. He was a matchmaker of influence, a curator of opportunity, and a broker of access. And at the center of his network stood Meghan, one of his most refined and carefully polished protégés.
This is way back in 2006. I wonder if Trevor ever knew about this. People can have double lives because look at these pictures could not be shown in the United States, all over North America, only in certain countries. And I don't think Trevor would even thought back then of going through a VPN and seeing where Meghan Markle is or what she's doing.
Insiders describe Marcus Anderson's circle as a kind of finishing school for the ambitious, where women were introduced to the right rooms, coached on how to dress, speak, and move, until they could glide through the world of power like they were born into it. Harry wasn't just another chapter in Meghan's story, he was the apex of her climb. Things grew darker when Harry examined the wedding guest list. Nearly half the names from Meghan's side were tied directly to Marcus's network brand executives, club directors, and social figures who had no connection to her Hollywood years. The ceremony that the world watched as a grand royal love story suddenly looked different in hindsight, less like romance and more like a meticulously staged summit.
Ridiculous story about how they first met. The whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Then came the memory that haunted him most, the old voicemail from William, a warning disguised as brotherly concern. Be careful. You're not marrying into a romance. You're marrying into a strategy. At the time, he brushed it off as jealousy. He doesn't anymore. Because as Harry replayed those messages, scrolled through familiar faces, and counted the endless coincidences, the illusion finally shattered. Every moment of his love story began to feel rehearsed. Every introduction, every photo, every whisper, all choreographed to perfection. From quiet meetings to wedding bells, it all followed a script he had never seen. And when he looked at the woman beside him, he no longer saw fate, he saw design. In this version of the fairy tale, the prince didn't rescue the actress. The actress rewrote the story and crowned herself as its queen. Once the mask cracked, there was no unseeing it. The glowing interviews, the synchronized smiles, the flawless charity moments, they all started to look like scenes from a play he was never meant to star in.
Markle only becomes prominent for Soho House, guys, after she starts being on Suits and she's introduced to Marcus Anderson. And then she gets more consistent and more prominent work, okay? Because then she could be in the presence of Marcus Anderson.
Inside their private life, Harry began noticing the smallest shifts first. Conversations that once flowed naturally started to sound rehearsed. Meetings happened that he hadn't heard about, and names casually mentioned over dinner began surfacing in press leaks soon after. It was as if every move he made, every statement he gave, was being quietly shaped, softened, and reframed, filtered through Meghan's growing circle of advisors, many of them former Soho House insiders. What began as love was now being managed. When palace aides called her savvy, they really meant strategic. When journalists praised her independence, insiders whispered another word, calculating. And while Meghan spoke publicly about breaking free from royal control, behind the scenes she was building her own empire piece by piece. One brand deal, one documentary, one perfectly curated image contract at a time. Harry, once seen as the world's most untouchable royal, now felt like a supporting character in someone else's script. Even his memoir, insiders claimed, carried traces of ghostwriters tied to Meghan's media circle. The words sounded like his, but the framing felt anything but. And through it all, Marcus Anderson remained close, a shadow advisor seen at private events, quietly credited for introductions, strategy, and behind-the-scenes coordination. The same name, the same pattern.
Being brainwashed by these Hollywood people who think this is the way to make money and, in the end, destroy our monarchy to make their fortune.
By the time Harry realized how much power had shifted, it was already too late. Meghan had mastered the one skill no royal ever trained for narrative control. She didn't just escape the institution, she replaced it. The prince who once fought against the crown now found himself serving a different kind of power. Quieter, sharper, and far more calculated. Because sometimes the throne isn't made of gold, it's built from influence. And Meghan sits on hers effortlessly without ever needing a crown. When the palace gates finally closed behind them, the world believed they were walking into peace, freedom, silence, and a life away from the cameras. But that silence never arrived. Meghan understood something deeper than anyone else. In a world fueled by image, the one who shapes the story doesn't just survive, they reign.
Guest list to her wedding showed her real ambition was to be a star in California.
Almost overnight, Meghan's circle transformed into a full-scale operation. New PR firms appeared, Hollywood strategists joined the ranks, and image consultants, ones who had never stepped inside royal walls, suddenly knew exactly how to craft the perfect celebrity monarchy. The documentaries, the interviews, the so-called tell-alls, they weren't confessions at all. They were carefully planned campaigns. Every production had its timing down to perfection. A royal controversy here, a personal revelation there. Each release seemed to appear just when she needed to shift the headlines she couldn't control. When criticism grew louder, a sympathetic profile followed. When the questions got too sharp, a rebrand magically appeared. Insiders later revealed that early versions of the Netflix series had been rewritten after Meghan's private review sessions, scenes softened, quotes adjusted, and narratives reshaped until every frame fit her chosen image. The story wasn't simply told, it was engineered. And through it all, one constant thread tied everything together. The same communications advisors from her old Soho House network and the same Marcus Anderson contacts whispering strategy from behind the curtain. Every message echoed the same refrain, Meghan the victim, Meghan the visionary, Meghan the voice of change.
Truly believed that when he met Meghan, she whispered into his ear, a 36-year-old mature woman whispered into his ear, Harry, you and I could change the world.
Even Harry's tone in public began to change, slowly but unmistakably. From outrage to apology, from independence to quiet echo, he wasn't telling his story anymore, he was defending hers. Media analysts now describe it as narrative inversion, a masterclass in perception control. Turn scrutiny into sympathy, turn ambition into activism, turn strategy into survival. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, one thing was undeniable. Meghan hadn't escaped the monarchy's media machine. She had rebuilt it, with herself firmly at the center. In that new world, truth isn't uncovered. It's edited, refined, and reframed, frame by frame, until only one version remains hers. Maybe it was always meant to end this way, not with a crown, but with control. Not in a palace, but inside a perfectly crafted narrative. Because when you trace every thread from the yacht photo to the carefully arranged introductions, from the curated guest list to the global media empire that followed the image transforms completely. It stops looking like a love story and starts to resemble something else entirely. Not a romance, but a recruitment. Every connection, every friendship, every perfectly timed opportunity reveals the architecture of a life meticulously designed to ascend. And at the heart of it all stood the woman the world thought it already knew. To her admirers, Meghan Markle is transformation made flesh, the girl who rose above cruelty, class, and convention to redefine what it means to be royal. To her critics, she's the embodiment of ambition, polished so carefully it gleams as empathy, every word measured, every tear perfectly placed. But to Harry, she remains the unsolved equation that won't let him sleep. The love that might have been real, and the manipulation that might have made it impossible to ever tell the difference. Because if the photographs, the timelines, and the connections all point toward orchestration, then what part of it was truly genuine? Was it fate that brought her into his world, or was it a story she'd already written for herself? Maybe both, maybe neither, and that's what haunts him the most. The world saw a fairy tale. Harry saw the machinery beneath it. And once you've seen the strings, you can never believe in magic again. Maybe the official story is true, but maybe it's just the best edited version we were ever meant to see.